Right sizing, not to be confused with downsizing, is trying to work out how many people you need in each single position. It's not just working out the number you need, but the logic as to why. It's done with a lot of fanfare. Managers shouting, screaming for more, using magic numbers, saying, let's take the number of employees and divide it by 100 to work out how many HR people we need, so a magic number. It's done through cuts across the board. So basically saying, oh my goodness, we're too costly, let's cut by 20%, let's cut everywhere by 20%. So basically, and lastly, it's just evolving over time. The consequence is your organization has the wrong people, the wrong numbers of people doing the wrong things. Too costly in certain places, other people overly stretched in others. There are 4 tools you can use for right sizing. They start with the simple and they move in increasing complexity. The first is ratio analysis. Ratio analysis is saying what ratio of this group do we have to that group. So for instance, a ratio, span of control is a ratio. So what's the span of control by position, and does that make sense? The big danger is the magic number. So just taking one ratio and applying that. So the key is to triangulate with multiple ratios and say, is this balanced? Is this the right level of investment? Example might be revenue per salesperson, BDD salespeople versus sales analyst support is another example. So the second method is looking at activities. What is the work that needs to happen and how much of each piece of that work is required? So you look, the way to start is to build a baseline, what we call an IAA, individual activity analysis. This says how much time is each person spending and what's the total investment you're making in terms of those activities. Then you say, is that right? Are we spending too much in some areas, too little in others? You make a judgment call, and a lot of this is about judgment, as to how much effort should be spent and where. And then you start building your to-be organization based on that effort. The third is driver analysis. So you have certain drivers, for instance, the number of operating lines, and the number of shifts, and the number of operators per line. This is a deterministic calculation, so you're multiplying to calculate a number, and these numbers are effectively productivity drivers and volume drivers that you're combining together to come up with a logic as to why you need the headcount you need. So the fourth method is using mathematical modeling and simulation. That is where you're taking into account variables like flow of patients through a chemotherapy ward and queuing effects. And the only way to do that is by modeling it, simulating it, to work out how many people you need. Very uncommon technique, but there are many times if you don't do this, you can end up with disastrous results. It means that you can have confidence that you've got the right numbers of people in the right place. We're all budget constrained. Even the biggest organizations on earth, the most profitable, are budget constrained. So are you getting the right people doing the right things, the right volumes? Are you being productive in the right areas, and are people not being overly stretched in others? The other thing is the logic for reaching that conclusion. So in terms of change management, you need to be able to articulate to people why you're changing their headcount, both from a works council perspective or the employee perspective as to explaining the thought process you've gone through. It's a key part of actually implementing the organization and taking people on the journey with you.